I know we talked a lot about we were wanting to get more meat chickens and start really getting serious about butchering our own meat. These guys keep hanging out by my feet though. But we just haven't had the time or the expenses to really do it for ourselves. It has been the craziest last few months. So, just so many changes at one time. And so I didn't settle completely. I thought we could just probably go to the grocery store and fill up on meat that way, but I really didn't want to. Last time we got the meat chickens, I really loved the texture. It was so much better and firmer. They didn't completely fall apart in the crock pot or any other way. They're just chasing me everywhere. They're probably getting hungry. Yesterday I removed the feed from them because I decided to stop growing them out and go ahead and butcher some of them. Now, I just got these Thursday or Friday of last week, so I've only had them for a few days, and they came from the 4-H family that we always get meat chickens from. They produce a huge amount in order to have the right showbirds for their children for 4-H. And so for us, we can kind of get away from having to put in the time and effort of sourcing out our food and our birds and growing them and raising them right now, because I do trust them and their process. So it saves us a lot of time and money, to be honest, and it helps them recoup some of the money that they spent getting ready for show and everything else. So it's just a win-win situation all the way around, in my opinion. And it's nice to be able to have an option when I don't have the time to really do it myself right now. So yesterday we butchered 13 birds, and there are 7 left in here. I didn't want to get too many at one time, so we were supposed to get 20. I think we ended up with 19. Either I butchered an extra bird and didn't realize it, and it's in the freezer because after a while everything just kind of runs together, or actually, I see 7 left in here and there should be 8. Or in the hustle of grabbing birds, sometimes you just miscount because they move around so quickly and everywhere else. So that does happen. So I may have just either went ahead and butchered it and didn't realize it because it just takes a lot out of you, or I grabbed one less than I meant to, and that happens because, like I said, they move around so quickly. Sometimes it's hard, when a bunch of birds are running away from you, to keep track. And that is okay. Hi guys. You can tell that they were hand raised because they just kind of follow you everywhere. So yesterday when I butchered a lot of these, because I wasn't planning on doing it yesterday, I actually had a bunch of work that I needed to do outside of that. I had given them feed the night before. It was so cool out here compared to what it was. It was in the 50s, and for some reason, instead of going inside the coop over here, you can see they can get underneath it really easily. They were just insistent, instead of going under the coop where it's nice and warm for them and blocks out the wind, they're insistent in huddling up in a big group out here, and 19 to 20 birds huddled up in a big group outside for meat chickens can be kind of dangerous because they will smush each other, which sounds crazy, but they will. So you can see kind of eating grass and nibbling on stuff. So I was really concerned about that behavior, so I put some feed out thinking, okay, I may wait a couple of days before doing it because we're so busy right now. Let me get them some feed so they're not losing weight, because they will rapidly, as fast as they gain weight in meat, they will lose weight in meat because they are not eating like they should. So if you withhold feed for too long or you're not feeding them enough, they will rapidly lose weight, especially when it's cold, because they're shivering, they don't maintain their body temperature well, they're either really hot or really cold. So they're pretty finicky. I think as far as broilers go, the white ones, these Cornish rock crosses, are the hardest to raise because they require the most attention. I actually really would like to get into something like a Freedom Ranger or more heritage breed of meat chickens. When we had dual purpose chickens, it went really well. But I'll always have Cornish rocks too, because they're fast and easy. Just a quick way to get a lot of meat in the freezer in less than 2 months' time. These girls are about 6 weeks old. They were 6 weeks old when I picked them up, so they're almost 7 weeks now. Later this week, on Thursday, they'll be 7 weeks. But you can see how big they are. They actually produce quite a bit of meat. So that's one bonus to growing them. However, they do have as many health issues as people say they do. Now, if you choose not to feed all hours of the night, they'll grow a little bit slower, and that prevents some of the health issues. We don't keep ours indoors at all times. They have the freedom to come outside and walk around, so that helps out a lot too. However, because we keep them outside and I chose to feed them, so instead of withdrawing their feed for 24 hours because of the cold, and I was so concerned with them losing weight if I didn't get around to it, or something happened, or just them, piling up on each other because they were cold, I wanted them to generate enough heat. Whenever I went to butcher some of them yesterday, their crops were so full, and it was just not a fun process. Now, I pretty much figured out a way to pull the crops out so it didn't make a huge mess, but it was still a mess. Usually you withdraw feed for at least 24 hours and just the day before. And it makes the process a lot easier because the birds clean out, they're not full of feed and everything else. You have to worry less about puncturing their intestines and that going everywhere. And the big issue is that although I was butchering most of them, my little brother tried to help for one, but it was just not his thing. My little sister really wants to learn. She helps me out a lot. She's about 10. And so it's quite the process for her to do it. And she's figured out a lot because she always watches. She'll help me catch birds, do all that. So my oldest son helps me catch the birds too. They'll do all that. So it's something that she's seen for quite a few years us do. Sometimes we have raised our own birds, and a lot of times we have bought birds too that are almost ready to butcher, need to be fed out for another week or two. So she's seen the process before. This time she wanted to get her hands on and learn how I do it. So that's one thing I wish maybe I should have withdrawn feed for, because it was a lot harder for her to do it with full crops and everything else on the bird. And if you're new to this and you're not sure what a crop is, the birds essentially, they have an organ that it fills with feed, and they fill that up before processing it. So it gets really messy. It's down, whenever you butcher it, it's down right below the neck of the bird. If you do that, I recommend pulling the full crop and cutting it from the outside, just to keep that food crop from busting open inside the cavity of the bird when you're processing it. Now, I know there are probably people on my channel that don't eat meat and are horrified by this process, but the reality of the situation is we do eat meat, and we prefer to know where our meat is coming from and what's happening with it, and to see them outside and not shoved into some building. So this is how we do things for our own family, and in the long run, it may not always be cheaper to raise our own meat, but it's certainly nice to know where everything comes from and what we're putting in our bodies, and I feel like it's a healthier process. That is my opinion. And so we're going to continue doing this. Now, hopefully we can start getting in a position where we'll all have time and we can raise our own meat. I don't know when that'll be, so for now, the big focus is just going to be raising as much meat as possible this way. And if it helps out another family, that's beneficial as well. So if you're in an area where you find another 4-H family or FFA, whatever you have, or just people that have too many broilers, they will sell them off for cheaper. Now, used to, we would pay $5 a bird for these, which was an amazing deal. There's no way I can even buy baby chicks for much less than that after shipping and everything else. So that was the best deal. But feed costs have gone up so much here. What is this piece of plastic? Have gone up so much in the last couple of months that it's really hard for people to sell their birds at that price at all. They're just out so much feed costs. So we ended up paying $10 a bird for this. Yes, I know at the store in some areas you could probably get it for less than that, but you can't at this quality. So that's why I really like this. The meat is firmer, the texture is better, the flavor is better, and we know where they come from. Now, it's not all fun and games, guys, because the first time that I butchered my own chicken, I turned green. Like, my cousin showed me how to do it. I don't have a plucker, so I skin them because that's the easiest way to discard of the feathers. You do lose the skin, so that part's disappointing. I'd like to have a plucker one day, but today's not the day. Literally, all I use to do this is a knife or multiple knives, because sometimes my knife gets dull and it needs to be sharpened. I don't want to stop, so I have more than one available. But that is it. I use a knife. It's like a $25 knife that you can get at the store. I've used a fillet knife in the past. Right now I'm using just kind of like a knife you would skin a deer with, similar to a buck knife but without the hook attachment on it. And so that's all I'm using. It's nothing special, and I'm doing all the work on this, and the knife's good for about 7 birds and then they start to get dull. So I don't have a cone or anything. And also, when it comes to putting a bird in a cone and slicing across the artery, I'm really scared of not putting enough pressure. I've done it once before out of necessity. It's really not my thing, and my knife's not sharp enough to handle that. So instead of making my own cone and doing it that way, honestly what I do is use a subsonic 22 round, pop them in the back of their head, and pick them, because obviously birds will start flapping at that point. I pick them up and I put them into it was 55-gallon barrel. Now I'm using a plastic trash can. It's clean. It's not being used for trash. No worries. It's for this process. And I put them in there so that it contains kind of whatever mess may come out. Of course, their feathers and stuff are not so pretty when you take them out of the bucket because of that. But it's just the easiest way for me to do it. And then I get everything done. And I only have to use a knife to do it. And then, of course, I use a little 22 rifle. So that's it. It's a fairly easy process, and I would really love to show it. I know people have asked me in the past why I don't film it, and the answer is simple. YouTube is crazy when it comes to things like that. People are squeamish when it comes to things like that, and it's just not the easiest platform to show the entire process on. If I do find a platform ever that I like, that I can show in more detail with, I would love to do that, because there are so many families, especially homesteading families, that don't have access to all this equipment or the money to buy everything, and would love to know how to do that. So I may do that in the future, or I may even remove the head from the birds and then show the process. But still, I'm afraid that would get reported, because not everyone wants to see that. Some people are squeamish, and YouTube has some pretty insane rules on stuff like that. So that is definitely something that I try to move away from, just because I don't want to start a war with the platform, to be honest. You can see these birds are a little active. If you're trying to put on your meat quickly. People will put feeders around. They won't allow their birds to go outside because they do lose some weight and don't put on weight as fast when they're burning calories. However, I like to see them this active. I like to see them eating the grass seeds and all of that. They're actually working their way at grass right now. I will say this year was the first year, and I've shown the chickens in the bags previously when I showed all the stuff in my freezer. This year was the first year that I used those shrink wrap bags for birds, and I will never stop using them at this point. I only had 8 left, so what I did, because we ran out of gallon bags, I could have swore 2 days ago I saw an entire container of Ziploc gallon bags on the shelf in the kitchen, but when I started butchering they were gone and all we had was quart bags. So I used 7 of the bags for the birds to put the whole birds in. I used the last one because everyone here loves to go fishing. I don't like to waste the heart and liver organs because those are great for fishing. So I put those all in one bag together. That way there's something to go fishing with. It prevents some of the waste and saves money in the long run. And then we went ahead and added the seasoning to the bags with a little bit of water, so the meat would be pre-seasoned. I'm excited because I've never done that before to see how it turns out. And then the shrink wrap bags, you literally just dip them into the water and they shrink up to the chickens within 3 seconds, and you have a zip tie on it. You pull the zip tie and that's it, and they're shrink wrapped in. I did find that it's best to put the feet at the bottom of the bag and the breast area, the top of the chicken, and the neck at the top of the bag. It soaks up to the chicken better. But I wish I could have videoed that process, but my phone, I let my 8-year-old play a game on it to kind of keep him occupied while I worked, and I didn't have the battery full enough to kind of use it and video everything. Sometimes you just have to choose which one's easier, being able to video everything or being able to get work done, and I had a lot to do, so I chose getting the work done. Now I only have 7 left, so that's not too bad. Yesterday was Sunday, and my parents and my siblings didn't get home from church until the afternoon, so we started about 2 p.m. and worked until about 6:30 p.m. And in between that I did take a break to rest, eat, get something to drink. So it actually went fairly fast when you think about that, and only having a knife to process everything. Not too bad of an experience at all. Okay, so you can see that there's other stuff in here. This is my mom's freezer, but I went ahead and put some of the chicken in here. So this is what I'm talking about in the shrink wrap bags. They're actually really nice, and you can see this is all the seasoning. I think we did 4 jalapeno garlic, and some of the liquid's not completely frozen in them yet. 4 jalapeno garlic and 3 lemon pepper. So it turned out pretty well. That's what I meant by the zip tie. You pull that in as it shrinks up to the chicken. And here we did some chicken legs, or chicken leg quarters, so they have the thigh and legs, just because they weren't big enough to really go individually as chickens, or as chickens, as legs or thighs, because they're younger. Now if we had waited a little bit longer it would. And these quart bags have 3 to 4 breasts in them. You can see that's 1 breast. They are massive. It's one thing about the Cornish, they have a lot of meat on the breast, but this is kind of everything here is what I'm talking about. So, and like I said, there are other things in this freezer too, but it can give you a good idea of the chickens. Pretty good amount. I did not want to waste the carcass of the chickens so we did some of them as whole chickens, but when I ran out of bags, I cut them up and put them into quart bags, and that's how we ended up with a bag full of wings, which they were very meaty wings. So when we have hot wings, that's how we'll do it. Several bags of breasts and several bags of leg quarters. And then I didn't want to waste the carcass, so I put it in here. We cut up some onions and put it in here and seasoned it, filled it with water, and they have completely broken down. I will separate this so you can see the camera steaming up because of the heat. And this makes bone broth. It's really good. It just needs to be strained. That way nothing goes to waste, and it makes use of the meat and everything else that's left on the carcass of the chicken. So if you're going to cut up the chicken, I highly recommend making bone broth on top of everything else. And we're back outside, and everyone is kind of resting over there. You can see this is the same pen that we used for geese and everything else. So if you're familiar with when we had geese and ducks and all of that, how everything was set up, it's kind of divided into 3 or 4 areas instead of one big one. It makes it easier when you want to separate babies, meat chickens, or you're raising several types of poultry at once. So, and I wanted to show this, but I have to go soon because my daughter actually has occupational therapy this morning. So pretty soon we're gonna have to get ready for that. This is a big, it's a little bit of a mess over here. This is a 55-gallon barrel, and at the bottom of it, my husband put this attachment on it and then connected this so I can turn it up or down. But we have it on a steady drip, and this barrel lasts about a week and a half. And then this container I put in front of it, it's just one of those rubber feed containers, cost between $8 and $10 at the feed store. You can get smaller ones for $5 or any range in between depending on the size. And then we just let the water drip into it, and they come over and drink it. At first we tried putting this little metal container and it on a very slow drip, but they're heavy and clumsy, the birds are, so they kept knocking it over. So I moved this feed bucket over here, and it makes a really big difference. They can't dump it over when they bump into it because it's too heavy, and then they can steadily be watered, which is really cool. So I highly recommend doing something like this. It's really easy to clean this little container. It steadily provides water. Now, if you're doing a large number of birds, I would say anything over 20, you probably want more than one of these drums, because if not, there'll be constantly birds surrounding the waters. But for about 20 birds, which is what we had, it works really well. This one is more than enough, and anything less than that, it's fine. But like I said, also we let our birds walk around. They're in here eating the grass, everything else, and there's another side to this. So they're not interested in just standing and hovering over food and water all day, every day. They do other things too. And I think that makes a big difference. But I am glad that everyone took time to kind of watch this video. And I'm going to head inside to get everyone ready so that I can do my daughter's occupational therapy today. And I think later, I'm not sure if we're going to butcher any more of these today, but later I'll definitely be in the gardens working around because it's finally cool enough for us to work during the day. And I'm about to have a break from school for about a week, so actually I have plenty of time to get stuff done around everything else. So that is great news.